questions, that's pretty much all we have for you guys. Yes?
Well, I have 11 questions, but I'll start one at a time.
Okay, cool, all right.
How many guardsmen are with this unit?
Currently, this unit has 143 soldiers assigned to the unit.
How do you get assigned?
There's several different ways, but coming off the street, say you're the better one to answer that one.
So it would start with the recruiting efforts. So the basis for filling any unit or assigning soldiers to any unit is to find new soldiers, train them either or during basic training and advanced individual training, learn whatever job that they're going to do, and then fill them in this unit that way. We have other means of filling soldiers in this unit, i.e. Sergeant Rossetti didn't always start here in this unit. I didn't always start here in this unit. Soldiers looking to broaden their career span or broaden their what they want to do in the military. So say I started out as a military police officer and I came here because I wanted to expand what I did in the military. I wanted to do other things. I don't like to stay stagnant for too long. So you would have the soldiers that voluntarily transfer here, and then if you have missions like the C2CRE mission, the reacting to natural disasters missions, a lot of the times we have to fill the vacancies that we do have. So we're allowed 159 soldiers, but currently we have 143, you said? So we would have to pull soldiers from other units, sometimes voluntarily, sometimes voluntold. So they would come here, and then usually a lot of those soldiers, because of the atmosphere that we have in this unit, everybody's kind of real family oriented. So you don't just join a military unit. It's like, oh, these are just guys I work with. Everybody becomes friends. They become families. They start hanging out with each other. They start visiting with each other's families, barbecues, all that kind of stuff. And then when they get here, they don't want to leave. So when it's time for them to go back, they're like, I'm just going to transfer and stay here. Yeah. So that's how we get a lot of soldiers.
Yes.
How far away are some of the hometowns? I know the unit is based here, but the individuals live elsewhere.
I think the farthest traveling soldier we have is from Indiana.
Well, part of the mission.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
The average driving distance for our unit is 47 miles right now. But that's not to say, like, we have some soldiers that live 2 blocks away, and then we have other soldiers as far as Indiana that goes right through. So it's to jump onto his points, as usually when a National Guard soldier enlists, 8 times out of 10 they'll enlist into the closest National Guard armory to them, and then the other guys, they'll drive further away because they want a specific job in the military or in the National Guard. But the majority of the people, we are the closest one, or the next closest unit from us is either in Belmont or Grand Rapids, and then north of us is in.
We got Traverse City, we got Greenville, we got Big Rapids. I think those are the closest ones in proximity.
Yeah. So the majority of people, like when a recruiter enlists, like when he was a recruiter, he was going around to the local areas and said, hey, here's your opportunity to join the National Guard, and this unit here is in Montague. They're a heavy engineer unit. These are the jobs that are listed. Do any of those interest you? And then if they said yes, then they join the unit here. Is that yes, ma'am.
Is there any of this organization in Michigan down helping with people in the Hurricane Michael?
In this specific unit, no, but the Michigan National Guard does have soldiers down there right now, yes. And then a month and a half ago, the flooding up in the UP, our unit here actually deployed an entire platoon up there to go up there and pretty much remove rubble from roads, and then bring in fill, lay down new road so that it was passable again. So they went up there and they spent 21 days.
It was the 20th of June till the 3rd of July. The first group came back, and the second group came back on the 7th.
Right.
So it was 31, 11, 18 days.
18 days. So, yeah. So we to those type of things, and then we were this close to going to the hurricane on the East Coast about 3 weeks ago. So.
And what made it that you did not go, if you were that close?
There was closer engineer units.
Okay.
So they basically, that state, whenever a national disaster kind of happens, that state will pretty much throw the question out of, hey, we need this type of, we're expecting this, so we're requesting this kind of assets, so who can help us out? And then we did all the work saying, okay, we can provide you guys this, we can do this because of this, and then they say, okay, we don't need you anymore.
How does, when you crossed the Mackinac Bridge, did you? Going up Mackinac Bridge probably, right?
Yes, sir.
Do they, with the big equipment, do they probably, have you escort you or, traffic a little bit or stuff like that? Or-
They did not have, they did not have escorts going north or south. What it was, they were restricted to one lane and they could only cross at a certain time of the day. And, they tried to get them on the way back, they tried to make them move after nightfall. And, they said that wasn't gonna be feasible because how much farther of a drive they had before they can bed down for the night. So they ended up shutting down one side of the bridge and they were only allowed to use one lane while they went. So,
What kind of perks does one get in signing for the National Guard? Like, do you get GI Bill, education, veterans, hospitalization, things like that?
yes, sir. Actually, for the National Guard, everybody's entitled to the Montgomery GI Bill. So they get the GI Bill, they get what's called the GI Bill kicker. I don't know if you've known about that one. The GI Bill kicker just recently went up to $350 a month from $200 a month. They're also entitled up to a $20,000 signing bonus. They get federal tuition assistance, and because we're also state funded, we also offer state tuition assistance. We have college partnership programs with 21 different colleges here in Michigan that reduce the cost of tuition or cut it down to only the cost of federal and state tuition. And with our state tuition education benefits, you're allowed to use it with your federal education benefits. So a lot of soldiers in the other branches, they get the GI Bill and the federal tuition assistance, and they can only use one or the other for their classes. For the Michigan Army National Guard and other National Guards around the country, they can actually use their federal education benefits with their state education benefits and pocket the extra money that comes back what's not paid to the school.
How
So
do you
actually-
house yourselves when some of your troops went up there to, you pay to take care of the flooding? How do you house yourselves, feed yourselves?
In that particular instance, our soldiers were stationed in the Calumet Armory.
Oh.
And they basically, every single armory has enough cots for every single one of their soldiers. And actually, our soldiers, because the main basically hub for the Michigan Army National Guard is Camp Grayling. They have basically a huge thing called TISA, and I could not tell you what that acronym means because the military acronym book is probably like that. But that's the main food source for the Michigan Army National Guard. So on our way up there, one of our trucks were actually diverted onto Camp Grayling to pick up several pallets of MREs or meals ready to eat.
Okay.
So, and if we were to go somewhere else, we have the ability to house ourselves because we have GP medium tents, which one tent is about the size of this room, and we have several of them that can basically house ourselves. Yes, ma'am.
How do you guys get trained to work this equipment?
Oh, I'm glad you asked that question. So, as soon as somebody joins the military, you get basically a training date to go to basic training. And basic training right now is 10 weeks long. And in that basic training, you basically learn everything you need to know about how to be a soldier. So how to wear all these uniforms, how to wear them properly, how not to talk back to a drill sergeant, because that's a very bad idea. You get taught how to try to avoid bullets the best you can, but how to shoot your rifle, clean your rifle, all the basic soldiering tasks of how to be a soldier. Now, after you graduate basic training, you move on to your advanced individual training or your actual MOS job training. So for this particular unit, it is 7 or 8 weeks long, done at Fort Leonard Wood down in Missouri. And there you learn everything there is to know about all of our equipment. So it's a very broad basin. They basically mainly try to teach you how to operate all the equipment, because an 18-year-old kid coming off the street, he's not going to know how to move this 30-ton piece of equipment across the ground or how to grade a road very well. So they're going to teach you the basics, the basic knowledge of how to operate the equipment. And then after that, when they graduate their AIT course, they'll come back to us, and then we will teach them the fine-tuning pieces throughout the year. Now, like a base pay private or someone that's like younger of age, they're not going to know a whole lot. But as you go through your military career, you'll gain knowledge. And one of the great things about the National Guard is you're not only a part-time soldier doing this 1 week in a month and 2 weeks in the summertime, but you also are on the civilian job. And some of our soldiers here, this unit, like they're all, a good majority of them are in the construction field, but some of them are, they're so the knowledge base that they have on construction is incredible. Like one of our soldiers can sit there and look at something and just calculate what they need to do right in his head. And I have no idea how he does it, but well, for one of our projects that we had to do this summer up in Camp Grayling, he sat there and they had this butter bar lieutenant or a brand new lieutenant. He's like, hey, you guys are going to do it this way. And he sat there and looked at it, and you could tell that his mind was just running, and he's looking at it, he's like, sir, what you're saying, it's just not going to work. We're going to need to do it this way. He's like, well, how do you know that? Well, this, and that. And holy cow, okay, we'll do it your way. So that's one of the great benefits about the National Guard is you're not only, like, when you go to an active duty unit, those soldiers, they only know what they've been taught in active duty. Versus the National Guard, we bring a lot of other stuff to the table. So a National Guard unit, in my opinion, and this is only my opinion, is a better rounded soldier in the American military. Just because, like, when I went to Iraq the first time, back in 2003, there nothing was set up yet. So when we first got into Camp Leatherneck in South Baghdad? Yes. Just south of Baghdad, they had absolutely nothing set up yet. Like, there was Marines digging holes with their little itty bitty shovels, and we got there like, hey guys, why don't you just sit down and relax? We grabbed our backhoes and scoop. Hey, just relax, man, just scoop. The Marines absolutely loved us because there. And then they didn't have any of the facilities to like use bathrooms, so they were digging holes and going to the bathroom in the hole, and then we built latrines for them. And then we went, when we first got there, the Marines went 3 months without a shower. So we're like, well, we're kind of civilian soldiers, so we really like taking showers. So one of our guys, he was a plumber on the civilian side, so they grabbed a crane, they grabbed a 500-gallon water buffalo, put it on top of a shipping container, and then plumbed in a whole bunch of different stuff and made showers for everybody. And the Marines absolutely loved us while we were there because we brought a lot of civilian traits into it, not just our military jobs. So. Did I go ranting on?
No, that's fine.
Yes, sir.
You said you've been here since 1985. How long have you been manager?
How long have I been here?
No, the National Guard.
The National Guard has been in Montague since 1985. Before that, we were in Muskegon.
Oh, okay.
Where in Muskegon was the Guard? I cannot remember where the National Guard building was in Muskegon.
That is a great question, and
It was actually downtown behind Muskegon Catholic Central. It's now the Army Reserve building. So we gave it up to the Army Reserve.
What's the difference?
So the Army Reserve is exactly what it sounds like. It's a reserve component of the active duty Army. So for the active duty Army, if they can't fill, say, these positions, they have these many soldiers, they need to fill all their positions, and there's these positions that are vacant. They have the soldiers that volunteer to do it 1 week in a month and 2 weeks a year. And if, say, times of war, World War II, Vietnam, Korea, all that kind of stuff, if they didn't fill all those vacancies, they would pull these soldiers from the Army Reserves into the active duty, and then they would be active duty soldiers. The National Guard's kind of the opposite of that almost, because we volunteer to be the 1 week in a month and 2 weeks in the summer, and when we deploy with our own. That's not, hey, we need this body, that body, that body. You guys are coming over here, meet your group, this is who you're with now. For us, it's like, okay, we need this kind of a unit, can the National Guard support it? Yep, take the whole unit and send it. So,
Do you have a medic in your personnel?
we do, Specialist Max, and then we're looking to get another medic here soon, so.
Women in the National Guard?
What was that?
Do you have women?
I believe we have 23 females in this unit right now.
Really?
That's me.
What's the minimum age to join?
17 years old. Yep, as long as you're 17 years old with a high school diploma or GED or on track to graduate as a high school junior, you're eligible for service in the Michigan Army National Guard.
How long is this?
When I was in the Army, you had 2 years active duty, and then you had 2 years active reserve. Is that still functioning that way?
They called that the Active First program. I think we got rid of that 7 or 8 years ago. So we don't do the Active First program anymore.
So now they do, and it's been developed, I think they started doing it in the 95, late 90s anyways, where they have your mandatory service obligation. And in the military, the very first time that you join the military, everybody has to serve 8 years into the military. So there's several different ways that you can actually do that, and it's either what's called a 3x5, 6x2, or an 8x0, or some people do a 2x6, where you do 2 years, 5 years, or whatnot in the military, and then after you get out of that, you get put in what's called the inactive reserve, which you're not really in the military anymore, but in the event of all hell breaks loose, they can still call you back up. And then that makes up the rest of your time, up to the 8 years in the military service.
It was the way we eliminated the draft, or currently trying to eliminate the draft, is by saying, hey, you volunteered to serve this amount of time, but you're under contract for this amount of time. So if World War III was to kick off, hey, you still have 2 years left on your contract. I know you're not openly serving, but you're already trained, you're already skilled, and we need you back. So come on home. Sir.
We went overseas. We went to Europe. For every year there, we got 1 month off of our, and those that went to Korea got 2. Is that still in?
Right now, when we go overseas, I think it's 14 days is what we get when we come home on leave. But we accumulate 2.5 days of leave every month, so 30 days of leave every year. But when we're deployed, we're only allowed to use 14 days of it during the time that we're overseas. And I believe, do you have the next question?
I believe you said 47% go overseas for your Baghdad's and stuff. Okay. Did that leave enough of the National Guard here back stateside to do what might have had to been done? Well, 47% of you all were over there.
Well, it wasn't 47% all at once. What it was over the course of the whole war.
Oh,
47% of the soldiers that were deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan consisted of National Guard soldiers. So it was constantly on a rotational basis.
Okay.
So I think originally we started out with 18-month deployments, and then eventually the active duty component started getting more involved. So then, and the Army Reserve unit started getting more involved. So then we were able to knock it down to 12-month deployments, and then later on down to 9-month deployments. So now at this point in the wars, if a soldier or unit's activated, they're only overseas for 9 months before they come home. So.
Have either of you been in a really life-threatening situation?
You want to go first?
I think your story's better than my story.
I want to hear both of them.
All right. So my very first deployment in 2003, it was very uneventful. I went over with a bridge company, and we didn't really do any bridging. We went over with the main push into Iraq, and the whole kind of theory behind the main push is if armored were to get up to something that they can't cross, then we build a bridge to cross it. But we pretty much crossed all the bridges that were already there, and when we finally got there, they didn't know what to do with the bridge company, so all we did was pretty much haul stuff back and forth from Kuwait back up into Iraq, and that's all we did. My second deployment, I deployed with what was called an omelet team. It's an operation mentor and liaison team. It consisted of 11 Americans, and we were attached to 33 Latvians because the Michigan Army National Guard actually partners with the Latvian military right now. Actually, a quick note, but on the 11th, I'm actually going to Latvia again for another local mission. But so the 33 Latvians and 11 Americans, we were assigned to the 6th Kandek of the Afghan Army, and our job was to train the Afghan Army of how to be an army. And I usually tell everybody, and again, this is my own personal opinion, is when we were training the Afghans how to be, because you're talking 98% of the Afghan military is illiterate, and I would have had an easier time to teach my 4-year-old child how to be a soldier than some of these guys. But some of their soldiers are absolutely great soldiers, and the more we got trained up, the better off they were. But we got put into, I was deployed in 2009, 2010 into Afghanistan. If you know what Afghanistan looks like, there's a little finger that's in the northwest corner that goes up into China and Pakistan. And that's where we were, which was the hottest spot in all of Afghanistan in 2009, 2010. We had 3 FOBs that were nearly overrun. We lost 11 Americans because we were attached to the 4th Infantry Division, or the 361 out of Fort Carson, and those soldiers that we were attached to, they lost quite a few. The 6th Kandek lost countless Afghan soldiers through the time. So my very first day in Afghanistan is we were just supposed to go on a simple patrol out to one of our COBs. And I actually went there because I was on the advance party, and I went there with a supply sergeant. And we just went there that he had to inventory a whole bunch of equipment because we were the unit that was coming in, and then the unit that was leaving was getting rid of their equipment or handing off their equipment to us. So we hitched a ride onto, one platoon was going to another COB, so we just hitched a ride onto them, and then they dropped us off, or we just, on our truck, we peeled off as they drove past. And then about 5 minutes later, they got ambushed and engaged. And so they called for reinforcements, and because we were the closest, we reacted to it. And as soon as this is my first day in Afghanistan, as soon as we came around one ridge, all I hear and I was sitting in the back of the truck, and all I hear is ting, 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 and then all of a sudden the entire windshield just goes spiderwebbed. So, and we were in an armored vehicle, thank the Lord, but, and then explosions all around, and that was my very first day in Afghanistan.
And you had to stay for how long?
I was there for I was in country for a little over 9 months. Yeah. I was actually gone for about 18 months because we went to Latvia first. We were in Latvia for 3 months training with the Latvian military. Then we went to Slovenia and did a mountain warfare school in Slovenia. Then we went to Germany for a month and did another training session at Germany, went back to Latvia for another month, and then we finally went into Afghanistan. So, yeah, I don't know, in 2010, I don't know if any of you guys recall where there was the Battle of Cobb Keating? No? Well, if you have the opportunity, if anybody has the opportunity to read the book Red Platoon, it's a really good book that was co-authored by a Medal of Honor recipient by the name of Clint Romeshay. I wouldn't say he's a friend of mine, not by any means, because I just know him and he kind of knows. I doubt he even knows my name. But I know of him, and we worked a lot together through working with the Alman and working with his unit side by side with the Afghan forces. But that FOB was nearly overrun. Everybody likes to say that it was overrun, but in the end of the day, we still held the ground. So, but on that day, 8 Americans were killed, and we held up 58 Americans held off a wave of over 300 enemy combatants. So, but his story is a lot better than mine.
Oh, I don't know if I'd say that. So I deployed to Iraq the first time in 2006. I was in Iraq for roughly 8.5 months. My first few days in Iraq, we were stationed in Fob Loyalty, Fob Loyalty. The area in Baghdad, and East Baghdad, was too hot to fly helicopters, and we had to transport our unit via Chinooks from Fob Loyalty to Fob Rustamaya. At the time, I don't know if you guys remember, in 2006, there was 3 Black Hawks shot out of the sky over the course of like a week and a half. That was that time frame. So they were trying to transport 150 soldiers during that time frame. So I think we stayed in Fob Loyalty 4, 5, maybe 6 days. And then we were finally transported to Fob Rustamaya. And when we landed in Fob Rustamaya, our first night, our first sergeant kicks open the door and starts yelling at all of us to get to the bunkers. We took, I think, 32 mortars or Katyusha rockets that night. And then, I think 3 hours after we got the all clear, we went on our first mission. Our first mission, we pulled out behind a a route clearance unit, and they stopped for an IED, an improvised explosive device, roadside bomb. And while we were behind them, a 10-inch EFP blew up right in front of our truck. So that was the first time I was blown up. Luckily, I didn't get hurt that time. Took out the front bumper, headlight, and I think both of our front tires. Then around Christmas time, I think it was 3 or 4 days before Christmas, or no, I take that back, it was probably 5 or 6 days before Christmas, was the second time we were blown up. We hit a 7-stack EFPs, only one of them hit our truck. That ordeal, I think I broke my nose. I was a gunner in a Humvee, so I bashed my nose on a 50 cal. And then the third time I was hit was May 26th of 2007, just a few days after Mother's Day. We had a civilian Iraqi come walking into our Iraqi police station, and he was screaming and shouting that there was a new weapons cache on a route that we were just down a week before. Said that they had just built a new mosque, which is one of their churches. And we told him there's no way they built a mosque and we could start storing weapons there. So he was adamant about it, so we decided to go on a little convoy mission to find out what he was jumping up and down about. And we see the first mosque, which is always there. A few more miles down the road, we see our second mosque, which was not there. Inside the compound, there was, I say a group, probably 20 to 30 males. One guy was sitting on the brick wall smoking a cigarette, which they're not allowed to do in their religion. So we knew something was off. So we kept going, I think another mile down the road to the children's school. We handed out a bunch of soccer balls, and we established a plan on how we were going to take pictures for our recon and then come back that night and raid the building. So on the way back, we put up our camo nets and took out our digital cameras and started taking pictures. But I think they were kind of onto us, because the only person that was left there was the guy sitting on top of the fence smoking a cigarette. So we decided we were going to go to Fob. What is that Fob called? I can't remember what it's called anymore. It wasn't Loyalty. Well, there's another Fob just down the road from where our Fob was. We stayed at Fob Rustamaya, but it was a couple miles down the road from where we usually stay at, but closer to where the building that we were going to raid that night. So we ended up missing a road to turn into that Fob, and ended up having to take a dirt road that borders Sadr City. And I don't know if any of you guys know Sadr City or heard of it. Sadr City during the Iraq War 2006 to 2008 was the most dangerous place to be in both Iraq and Afghanistan. And that was our normal operating area, our normal AO. And we ended up turning down Burr Road, and we hit a 4-stack of EFPs. I don't know if any of you guys know what EFPs are. They're explosive form penetrators. They're designed to take out tanks. They have a copper slug on the front of it, and once the explosive hits the back end of it, it turns into molten copper, and it's designed to melt in through one side of a tank and out through the other side. And I believe you're a tanker, weren't you, sir?
No, I was on a post that there were tanks.
Well, tanks are designed to be airtight, vacuum sealed. So if something was to penetrate one side and then go out the other side, it's going to suck everything out the exit hole with it. Unfortunately for us, we were just in a Humvee. So we hit something that was designed to take out multiple tanks in one Humvee. Unfortunately, they buried the 4-stack EFPs underneath the ground. 2 came in underneath the engine block. block, one came in underneath the driver's seat, and one came in underneath the radio mount right in front of my legs. So I was injured to the point where they were going to take my left arm from the elbow down. Most of my body was peppered in shrapnel. 70% of my face was second and third degree burns. I almost lost my left eye. Fortunately for me, I was in the gun seat. Everybody else was trapped inside the vehicle, so I exited the vehicle from the roof and proceeded to pull all 3 people out with one hand.
What he's not telling you is during that day, and I love telling everybody this because he is incredibly not or shy about telling it, is during his actions for that day, he was awarded the Bronze Star for valor. So that is
The Bronze Star with a V for valor?
yes, ma'am.
How are the rest of the men?
Philip Labonte was 24 years old at the time. He lost both of his legs, his left eye, and the use of most of his right arm. Fortunately for Philip Labonte, he is still alive, and I'm actually going hunting with him next month. Krisha Brown was 23 years old. She was our squad leader, female. She was peppered the entire left side of her body, and her handle was blown off from the inside of the vehicle, so she couldn't get out. And then Kiwi, our interpreter at the time, was 19. His face was burnt so badly that his eyelids were melted shut, so he couldn't see to get himself out of the vehicle.
Were you afraid?
I don't remember being afraid. I remember, so when it happened, I remember it being so hot in the truck that I had to get out. So I jumped out of the truck, and I realized I was standing outside of Solder City.
Yeah.
And I go, well, I'm not supposed to be out of the truck. Where's my gun at? I start looking around, and I think, oh. So when I turn around, I see the truck, and it's completely engulfed in smoke and flames. So I go to the driver's side door, and I yank it open, still not realizing my arm is injured. And Sergeant Krisha Brown's up on her knees trying to climb over a burning radio mount. So I grabbed the back handle of her vest and yanked her out of the truck. I said, what are you doing? She just looks up at me, covered in blood on this whole side of her body, and yells, get Labonte. So I run around the back of the truck. Sorry, this is a little bit of a hard story for me to tell sometimes. So I run around the back side of the truck, and the rear driver's side door is open, and Kiwi's inside of the truck screaming. So I grab Kiwi out, and then I hear Labonte screaming. So I opened his door, and I couldn't see anything but flames. So I reached in to grab him, and that's when I realized I'd lost the use of my left arm and hand. So I actually stuck my hand under his armpit, and I burnt most of my wrist trying to get him out of that truck. And once I got him out of the truck, he was talking to me for a couple minutes while I was trying to get tourniquets out. And sorry. No, it's okay. So I was trying to get my tourniquets out, and I couldn't get them out with my one hand. At that point, he stopped talking to me, and then he let go of my hand, and his head dropped back. So I figured he had passed. That's when I started losing it on everybody around because it took so long for everybody to react. Now, looking back now, I was 21 years old. We were all kids back then. My platoon leader, my lieutenant, was 21 years old. He was actually, I think, a month younger than I was. I actually think Labonte was the second oldest person in our whole convoy. And so once he was taken away, tourniquets put on and all that stuff, that's when I went for help. I dragged Kiwi with me. Sergeant Brown was taken away on a stretcher because she fainted. I figured it was due to blood loss and it was due to shock. And then we were transported back to Bob Restamaya. I talked to Sergeant Labonte 2 weeks later. He called me in the hospital. He was in a different hospital. And he was critical when we were transported from where we were at to the hospital. So he was air evac'd out of Iraq immediately. And because I wasn't considered a priority at the time due to my injuries being not as serious as his, which sounds, considering the injuries that he had versus my injuries, mine weren't considered as serious as his, so I spent 4 more days in the hospital in Iraq. He called me, like I said, 2 weeks later, and he asked me what all I remember. I said, I remember everything. And then I asked him what he remembered, and so I remember everything. I said, no, I said, I think you passed out. And he said, no, he said, I thought I was gonna die, and I seen the condition you were in, and I wanted you to save yourself. So I pretended that I did so you would get help. He was willing to sacrifice his own life to ensure that I went and got the medical aid that I needed.
I have no idea what you guys do. Sit
And that's why through his heroism that day, 3 people are still here today. And even though he was gravely wounded, he was still able to pull it. The rest of the people that were in his truck out of the flaming ball of fire. I've been through some stuff, but every time I hear that story, it gives me chills.
and you live to tell it.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
Up here on the board, it looks like you did some work in Whitehall with the softball field, little league fields or whatever.
Yes, sir.
How does that happen?
There's several different ways that you can make that happen. There's actually a federal website that nonprofit as long as they're a nonprofit organization, they can go on to that website and say, hey, we want this done. And then pretty much companies or perhaps the military can actually bid on that. Not bidding is a bad word, but it's the only kind of term that comes to my mind right now. Bid on that job saying, hey, we can do it. Or the military, if it doesn't happen too often, it was a lot easier to do before 9/11 because the National Guard was a lot more community involved. Nowadays, the National Guard is kind of rotated because we've been at war for so long. They kind of took away from the communities, but we're trying to slowly get back into it. But in that particular case, I'm not sure how the entire thing turned out, but I think the city came up to us and said, hey, would you guys be able to do this? And it took, I want to say about 1.5 to 2 years.
2 summers.
It was.
We lived right behind it, we watched it for the 2 years.
Oh no, I mean like the planning phase of it.
Okay.
Yeah,
But
it
as
was
far as
like the actual like
yeah,
getting permission to do it and getting all the legal aspect out of the way. It took about 1.5 to 2 years, and then we were finally able to do it. And then for our annual training for 2 weeks in the summertime, we came through there and they tore down all the trees and then leveled it all off. And then I'm not sure if we planted the grass or if another company came in and planted the grass. But, so.
It was interesting to watch, it was really impressive with all that equipment, and round and round. And
Yeah, and right now actually we're trying to do a land ownership, not a land ownership agreement, a land use agreement with the Boy Scouts of Michigan, just up north of town here. They've got a whole vast spot up north of town, and basically we're trying to say, like, hey, if you guys come in and let us use your facility, we'll actually maintain it because in order for our soldiers to train, we have to grade roads and move dirt and move bulldozers. So what's a better way than training on doing something for a local community like the Boy Scouts? So they have a vast area of trails and stuff that goes through their camp. So like we said, hey, let us use. Well, actually, they came and asked us, and they said, well, hey, if you let us use your facilities, then we can have our graders come and grade your roads, and then we'll come there and last November.
Yep.
No, it was spring, wasn't it?
It was, you're talking about for the land ad?
Yeah.
It was, I wanna say it was March.
Yeah, so just this past March, we actually went up there, and one of the basic skills of a soldier is learning how to navigate around using a map and compass. So we had some soldiers go out there and make some points, and then all our soldiers had to go and find all their points on the Boy Scout camp.